This is like the umpteenth time we've made this video. Seriously, this idea has been discussed ever since like 2018, but ultimately, it's never gonna go away. Really. Because even though we have made our fair share of videos about this topic over the past 7 years, there needs to be extended discussion about it because it really was the best case scenario for the Montreal Canadiens. Because as Canadiens fans, I think we all owe the biggest of thank yous possible to the Vegas Golden Knights. This tweet from yesterday was one of many that went over this entire idea. A lot of folks reminiscing on the past and bringing up the link between Montreal and Vegas. Here's a tweet. It's got 100,000 views from March FFS Price. Turning point of the franchise. Thank you, Las Vegas. And attached is the Montreal Canadiens 2018 trade with Vegas, which sent Captain Max Pacioretty over to Sin City in exchange for Tomas, Tatar, Nick Suzuki, and a 2019 second-round draft pick. Now, the draft pick we can ignore. It wasn't actually used by Montreal. That same pick was then traded over to LA, I believe, for Samuel Fagemo. Montreal got themselves an extra pick, which they used to select Matthias Norlinder in that same selection. So it wasn't directly the same assets that we're looking at right now, but essentially, look, Tomas Tatar was a good player in the Montreal Canadiens system. Helped him out in the finals, was doing his thing. Actually, no, he didn't help them out in the finals. He wasn't playing that whole playoff run. Yeah, that's right. But he was still a meaningful part of the Canadiens team for the next few years, and he did provide some interesting memes. Tomas Tatar! I had to really drag it out and get the R in there. Tatar! Okay, yeah, we're gonna skip past that. He was a meaningful part, but of course the big fish of this Pacioretty trade was Nick Suzuki. And this tweet by Jean-Francois C. goes out there and says, I understand why Vegas acquired Pacioretty in 2018, but the price they paid for 224 games of Pacioretty and no Stanley Cup is insane. Nick Suzuki is one of the best centers in the NHL, and Tatar has more points than Pacioretty since the trade, even if Tatar played way more games. A reply from Casper Brott goes out there and says, Mark Bergevin wanted Cody Glass, and Vegas told them, hey, you can have Nick Suzuki. The Habs got extremely lucky that Vegas wanted to keep the wrong guy. It's perfectly normal, Jean-Francois replies. NHL teams want the prospect drafted at the better spot. This is why Montreal wanted the 6th overall pick in Cody Glass, and Vegas wanted to keep the 6th overall pick. Luckily for Montreal, they were lucky in their bad luck. And this is another element that people will frequently bring up, as they did in this conversation. The 2017 NHL Draft was the very first Vegas draft ever, and they selected 3 guys in the first round. Cody Glass, Nick Suzuki, and Erik Brannstrom all went to Vegas. And of course, fanfare, reputation, the guy drafted at 6 is going to have more of that than the guy drafted at 13th. But Cody Glass isn't really doing too much at the NHL level nowadays. Meanwhile, Nick Suzuki's in a completely other planet. So, with Montreal trading away a captain in Max Pacioretty that a lot of folks would say he needed to get traded anyway, like his time as captain and as a leader on the Canadiens was coming to an end, mostly due to the team performing so poorly and his leadership not really being able to take the team places, there was a lot of controversy around Max Pacioretty towards the end of his career in Montreal. I definitely remember that in my comment section, but to see him get traded for the guy who would become the captain of the team 2 captains later, because you gotta remember Shea Weber was tossed in there for a bit, to see Nick Suzuki round himself out as one of the best players in the NHL post Four Nations break, a guy who was snubbed for that same Four Nations tournament, and a guy who scored 81 points this season in 75 games played. There are still 7 more games to go here for Nick Suzuki, who currently has 26 goals and 55 assists. He has now stepped into unknown territory because Nick Suzuki is the very first Canadiens player to score 80 points in a season, since Alex Kovalev in 2007-2008. It has been, what's the math on that? 2, 5, 7, 15 years since the Montreal Canadiens have had an 80-point guy. And it's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. Yeah, they went through the entire 2010s without a single 80-point guy. I mean, the team was playing so poorly in the late 2010s, so it's not surprising, but still, that is not a good amount of time. Kovalev, by the way, had 84 points in that 07-08 season. Nick Suzuki has 7 games left to get 3 more and potentially overtake the guy. There is a very real possibility that Nick Suzuki does that and becomes the first Canadiens player to score maybe 85 points in a season since whomever the last guy was. We can go into the history books later when that does occur. I'm going to say when that does occur and not if it occurs. Marco D'Amico had a really interesting tweet yesterday too. Suzuki hitting 80 points is a first for the Habs since 08 with Kovalev. According to Franny Pak, Francois, that was the longest active drought a franchise has gone without an 80-point score in a season. That title now belongs to Detroit, who haven't had an 80-point player since 2011 with Henrik Zetterberg. So, I guess Lucas Raymond is next in line to doing that for the Detroit Red Wings, although he has to get 7 points in the remaining 8 games of the season. Is that possible? I don't know. He is under a point per game in 24-25, so it's not guaranteed. Nick Suzuki, though, has been way over a point per game ever since the Four Nations break concluded. He was kind of hovering around point per game-ish before the Four Nations break, but especially with his late stint here, 7 points in his last 3 games, Nick Suzuki has totally taken control. The way he's performing now, and the fact that he's scoring all these points towards the end of the year, there is a non-zero chance that Nick Suzuki could maybe even get 90 points. And all this, you just gotta think about it, all this is coming because the Vegas Golden Knights were like, hey, take Nick Suzuki, Montreal. We don't want to give you Cody Glass. You can take Suzuki, and we'll be happy to keep Glass and Max Pacioretty. Now, I get injuries also played a part in Pacioretty's progression as the years went on, so maybe it's unfair to totally ridicule him, but still, Max Pacioretty was a part of a Vegas team that wasn't really too successful in the playoffs, although when Pacioretty left, that's when they ended up winning, so kind of funny to see how that works. I guess because Vegas already has their Stanley Cup, it's not really that big of a deal to bring up things like this and be like, oh yeah, Vegas helped out Montreal, they definitely put them in a better spot. Because Vegas is like, yeah, we'll just take our Stanley Cup rings and put them into our year, so we don't have to hear your criticism. We already got that Stanley Cup. Just imagine what things would have been like had Cody Glass gone to Montreal instead. The team would have been so much worse. Cody Glass is not a number 1 center by any stretch of the imagination, and Nick Suzuki would have been playing with Jack Eichel in Vegas. Imagine another 80, 90-point caliber guy in the Vegas Golden Knights organization. Would Suzuki be a first-line winger for Eichel? Or would he be second-line center? Because I don't think Suzuki would overtake Eichel. That's not easy to do for anybody. But just having a 1-2 punch, Eichel, Suzuki, and maybe Stone, add on a 30-goal scorer in Dorofeyev, and you have a really good recipe for success. Vegas is already great. Never mind the fact that they could have kept Nick Suzuki if they just traded away Cody Glass, who is a much inferior player nowadays. So everything seemed to have changed for the Montreal Canadiens, and it does seem like the Vegas Golden Knights really did set the team up for success long term. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about how Vegas helped the Montreal Canadiens organization. They changed Montreal's franchise forever. I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.